Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome. Welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across this great state of Michigan. I am here every week for 3 hours talking about the great outdoors, the history and tradition of hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping, and some wildlife issues and some conservation issues. We wrap up each show with some wild game cooking with Chef Dixie Dave Minar. I grew up in this lifestyle. To me, it is very important. I realize that we are outnumbered in our state today. There are more non-hunters and anglers than there are those of us who are active participants, but that's okay. Different things for different people. If you don't hunt or fish, God bless you. Just don't tell me I can't hunt or fish. That's the problem, right? If you are a non-hunter or angler, that's fine. And you say, look, if those guys want to hunt and fish, God bless them. That's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. But it's the people who say, I don't hunt or fish, so therefore, Avery and your buddies, you shouldn't hunt or fish. That's where I have a problem. And I'm going to get ahead of myself here a little bit, but I think the biggest problem facing the outdoor lifestyle, in particular hunting today, is not the anti-hunters. The anti-hunters, we know where they're coming from. We can see them out there on the side wearing their tie-dye shirts and their long beards and their sandals, and we kind of know them, right? But we do. We know them. We know where they're coming from. We know what they want, and we can therefore try to protect ourselves from them. They're not the biggest threat these days, in my opinion. It is our fellow hunters and anglers who I think are the biggest threat to our way of life these days. What do I mean by that? I'll show you. I'll share a couple of examples from this past week. I posted on my Facebook page, a picture of a heavy-beamed 2.5-year-old buck taken very close to the Avery family farm on the west side of the state. In fact, it's a honey hole my brother's been hunting in for 50 years. One of the neighbors shot that buck I'm talking about, and I posted a picture of it, and it was a really nice buck. Some guy decided he was going to be a jerk. And he said, that's just a 2.5-year-old buck, should let him go. Well, so I responded, look, don't be a jerk. It's not your tag. It's not your hunt. Please celebrate the legal harvest of all fellow hunters and give this guy the credit he deserves. And this guy came back and said, us big buck hunters know 100 times more than the rest of you people. Wow. Ban delete. I'm not gonna deal with that kind of stuff on my Facebook page. So he's now gone, and I don't have to hear that kind of comment from him anymore. But I hear it from enough people, enough hunters, that it really gets to me. Again, the comments from the anti-hunters, I expect that. What I don't expect is fellow hunters to turn on each other and feed on each other and criticize each other and chastise each other and dictate to each other what we should shoot and how we should shoot it. Let me give you another example. I posted video. I thought I was in a ground blind, but I was in a tree stand. And I just kind of panned across where I was sitting, and as I'm panning across the scenery, you could see my crossbow sitting on the shooting rail in the ladder stand in front of me. And I had a guy post, "Are you handicapped? You better be handicapped if you're shooting that crossbow." Well, I wanted to say, No, Charlie, I'm not going to say what I wanted to say. I could say it on the live stream, but I'm not going to say it on the air. If I choose to hunt with a crossbow, what does it matter to you? I have hunted with a recurve. I have hunted with a compound. I have hunted with a crossbow. I have hunted with a rifle. And those of you who are holier than thou who say you guys shouldn't be hunting with crossbows and you're hunting with compounds, no. If you truly believe that a crossbow gives us too much of an advantage, then you should be hunting a recurve. In fact, you should probably go out in the woods and cut down the stick and skin the bark off it, and then take some kind of a sinew from a deer you've harvested with a spear or whatever and make a string out of it, and then make your own arrows, and then take broadheads and chip them out of stones. It's not that anybody has an unfair advantage. What it is you choose the tool that you want to hunt with because that's how you enjoy it. Plus, in my case, I want to have the best chance I can of having a quick, clean, humane killing shot. That is the goal of all ethical and moral hunters, and I think 99% of us are ethical and moral hunters. So in my case, the most enjoyable hunts I ever had were with a recurve. I got to the point where I wasn't shooting it enough to be confident in my proficiency and accuracy, so I moved along because I didn't think morally it was the right tool to use. And rather than make the intermediate jump to a compound, which I hunted with for many years, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go right to a crossbow because that maximizes my efficiency and effectiveness. Does it give me an unfair advantage? No. The only advantage with a crossbow is you don't have to draw it. I'm still shooting one arrow, and my range is no longer than it was with a compound. So let's not do this. If you find yourself looking at a post online, and this is normally where it happens because I think most people wouldn't do it in person, although we're seeing it more and more. If you see somebody taking an animal that you wouldn't because it's not up to your standards, but they have a big smile on their face, just give it a like or shake their hand or congratulate them and move on. Move on. Doesn't matter to you what they shoot. Here in Michigan, we need to be taking more deer. So if you want to hold out for that 3.5-year-old, 4.5-year-old 10-point, go ahead. But the folks who are out there, and I realize, we should be shooting more does. Everybody should be shooting more does. But if somebody's got 1 weekend a year to hunt, and they see a 1.5-year-old spike walk in front of them, or a 4-point or a 6 or whatever, and they decide to take it, take it. Enjoy it. Enjoy the experience. Enjoy the hunt. Enjoy the venison. And that's especially timely now since we are 1 week away from the start of the firearm season. They're not going to be the number of hunters out in the woods that there used to be. So the hunters that are out there need to take more deer. Okay. In my neck of the woods, the leaves have just about all dropped now. You can see into the woods far further than you could just a couple of weeks ago. Corn's down. The corn has been down for a while now. That's good. That should help to increase the southern Michigan harvest because you won't have the cornfields the deer can hide in. The rut is on. The rut is on. In my neck of the woods, in my part of the state. I realize that may not be the case everywhere, but in my part of the state, the rut is on. Can I give you 2 non-hunting examples? I went out Monday night, sitting in a ground blind because it was just blowing so hard I didn't want to be up in a tree or even a ladder stand. So I hunkered down into just a beautiful old ground blind that has been on this property since before we ever started to hunt it. There's a lot of tradition, a lot of history, a lot of deer have been taken out of that blind. In fact, I took a nice doe out of there last year. So I'm hunkered down in there. I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to see anything tonight, but the rut should be kicking in. If the wind dies down, maybe. Just before dark, I see an animal come across the food plot in front of me, and he's moving like a buck. But I can't put a rack on him. Even with binoculars, I couldn't put a rack on him. Besides, he's 46 yards away, too far to shoot anyway. Next morning, I wake up, and I'm going through trail cameras, and I thought, just for the heck of it, I'll check the cameras around the house. I'm looking at a camera that I have installed over our driveway, and in the middle of the night, in the city, in town, a buck comes walking across our driveway. I thought, okay, well, that's a sign that the deer are moving. I'm telling my wife, Denise, this story. During breakfast the next morning, she said, well, there's a doe in the backyard right now. And I said, I bet there's a buck around here somewhere. I looked out the window, and there's a 2.5-year-old 8-point buck standing right behind this doe in the backyard. And he's got her pinned in the corner between a house and some arborvitaes. Talk about the rut being on. And then 4 hours later, we see the same buck still chasing what I presume to be the same poor doe. And this is in town. Now, I just need to see that type of rut activity while I'm hunting, and then I'll be happy. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine show after the break, Luke Pawloski of the Outdoor Conquest talks about some great fall fishing. Then Kris Duerson of Rapid River Knives. If you want to get a Rapid River knife for Christmas, I hate to start pushing this whole Christmas thing already, but now is the time to order it. In our second hour, Chad Stewart, DNR wildlife biologist, talks about the whitetail rut from the biological perspective. Then Sergeant Mike Mshar, DNR conservation officer, on how to stay safe and legal during this upcoming firearm season. The Ask Avery segment answers a question about the turkeys that we traded to Ontario for moose. How are they doing? And in hour number 3, Gabe VanWormer on making the transition from bow season to gun season. And we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge. Let's go to Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination, your fall waterfowl hunting destination, your ice fishing destination, your boat storage destination, your Angler Quest headquarters destination. What else? It's just great people, great facilities, great service. And the fishing there out in front of Linwood Beach Marina is going to get nothing but better as the water temps continue to drop. And if we get a good ice fishing year, they'll be fishing out there as well. The website, linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. I mentioned fishing because this time of year, so much emphasis, and from me included, is on hunting, particularly deer hunting. Luke Pawloski is a guy that I've been following online for the last couple of years. I find this guy to be fascinating, extremely interesting. If you go to his Outdoor Conquest YouTube channel, you'll see what I mean. The guy he's got the ability to go to a body of water, dissect it, and just catch big fish. He's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Luke, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike. How you been?
Real good. Listen, do you hunt at all? Or are you strictly a fisherman?
I do. No, I do hunt. When I have the opportunities to, I'm a big fan of the deer camp season coming up here next week. Although I moved 5 years ago from where I grew up, so my opportunities are a little more limited as far as deer hunting. I have some, but anymore I kind of focus more or less on fishing when I have the free time.
And it seems to be southeast Michigan. That's kind of your home water these days, your hot spot, your sweet spot.
Yeah, I'm Lake Orion area. I grew up in the Thumb, specifically the little town of Ubley, for majority of the first part of my life. But yeah, I moved down here 5 years ago with my family for work, and I've been taking full advantage of what is Lake St. Clair and the Detroit River now that I've moved down here, which is a body of waters that I've never was exposed to, growing up.
Detroit River, I think of primarily as a springtime fishery, a springtime walleye fishery. But Luke, following you, I found out there's a lot more going on, and it's pretty much year-round.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, right now, the walleye fishery down there is it mirrors what the spring bite is. Now, it's maybe not as hot and heavy, but from what I'm seeing and gathering, and guys are doing really well down there right now, vertical jigging for walleye.
Do you have the river to yourself pretty much this time of year?
No, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of guys just like me that are bundled up and just out there enjoying their time or what they have left of it before things start to harden up here.
So are you and these other anglers, are they targeting a particular species, or are they fishing for whatever they can get?
Right now, it's mainly walleye, and there is a select few of us that do target muskie in the Detroit River. Vertical jigging presentation seems to work best. And I got to give credit where credit's due. I got the idea from John Bondi. I don't know if you're familiar with Bondi Baits or anything like that.
I know the name,
but,
yeah.
So he's a really popular muskie fishing and walleye fishing guide over in the Canadian side, and I watch his content all the time, and I learned about vertical jigging for muskie a couple years ago and have tried it a few times, and each time I learned a little bit more about it, and just recently actually had some success, it's incredible. It's an incredible way to catch them.
How so? What do you mean by that, Luke?
So a muskie, a muskie is they're a very, very tough fish to catch, as most people know that have tried to catch them or heard about them, but they're curious, right? So when you're casting for them, now trolling is going to be your best method majority of the year to catch them, but they're a curious fish. So casting for them, a lot of guys, you cast all day and you get a bunch of follows, the fish follows the bait to the boat, you try to figure eight to get them to bite and they just don't bite. But the vertical jigging presentation allows you to place the bait right in the strike zone, and the fish has to do very minimal work or thought process to decide whether or not it wants to strike it. It doesn't have to chase the bait down. You can get it right in that strike zone, which is normally the bottom third of the water column from what I've learned throughout my last few trips. Sometimes they're right belly to the bottom, but just like a northern pike, the muskie's always looking up. So if you can get that bait right in the strike zone and happen to drift past one, almost always they strike it.
What depth of water are you targeting, or does it change from day to day?
So it changes. I mainly focus on the drop-offs of the river channel. So the areas I like to fish, I think it's the deepest point is like 40 foot. So I actually caught one in 38 foot of water that came right off the bottom. And then I caught one in 25 foot, which I learned that by just kind of side scanning around and looking for bait and stuff like that. Because they're in there eating anything, right? Whether it's walleye or suckers or gizzard shad, whatever's in there for them to eat. That's what they're in there for. And that's the main thing with muskie fishing is you got to have bait there. If there's no bait there, there's not going to be any muskie.
So you said side scan. I heard you say side scan. So have you delved into this very expensive but kind of interesting world of forward-facing sonar yet? Do you need forward-facing sonar to find these fish?
You don't need it. I am a very, very large advocate. Some people I know have mixed opinions on forward-facing sonar. I'm an advocate for it, mainly because it answers a lot of questions for me while I'm on the water. Does it help me catch fish? No. Does it put more fish in the net? No. But it does make my time on the water, it answers some of the questions I have a lot faster. But do you need it? No. I've always used side scan as my number one electronic, whether it's walleye or really anything. I kind of like to cruise through areas and really stare at the screen and see what's on the side of the boat, because there could be a ton of fish there. You just might be 30 feet from them, right?
Yeah.
But forward-facing sonar, so I just use it. It's similar to an ice fishing sonar. I set mine up for down imaging because, as you can imagine, I'm vertical jigging right off the side of the boat. So I'm seeing in real time alongside of my boat and straight down is the cone, and that's all I'm seeing. I'm not able to see anything else other than that. But what that allows me to do is see my bait, see exactly where it's at in the water column, And a lot of times for those muskie, they just come in out of nowhere. So there's really no time to react or try to trigger one to bite. They just show up and hammer the bait and then hopefully end up putting them in the net.
If you hook a fish, is it, I don't want to say a guarantee, but when you hook a fish, will you more than likely boat them, or is it two different things?
With vertical jigging, I've had really good odds, and everybody alike, it seems like when you hook them, it's a hard time them coming off. And one thing you got to be careful with is that they can actually inhale the bait pretty good too, because we're using, majority of it's like a 6-inch rubber bait that's they range from 7 to 9 ounces. And the way they strike it, I mean, there's no way they can't get the business end of the bait, right? Because the hooks are on the bottom. So if they come up from under it to hit it, as long as you got a good shoulder muscle to set the hook, you should be just fine.
What does your jigging stroke look like? Is it a little 6-inch, or is it a 2 foot? Are you keeping pressure on the line, keeping a taut line on the way back down? What are the subtleties here?
So it's basically, I try to go for like a 3-foot stroke, I guess I'll call it. A slow pull up, and then just a slow set down. A slow pull up, hold it, and then a slow set down. A lot of times those fish will hit on the way down, and it'll feel like maybe a walleye bite. It's just a quick tick because you're setting it down, but you gotta set the hook at that point, just assuming it's a bite, right? But that's how subtle the bite can be. It can be just the slightest tick as you're lowering the bait down, and you go to pull up again and the fish on. But a lot of times you really want to, if you feel that, you really want to try to set the hook and get a good hook set on them.
And then what is it like when you're setting the hook on a muskie, as opposed to, say, trolling for muskies, which is, as you say, very effective, but a completely different way to fish, and I suspect it's not as immediate or intimate as fighting that fish when you set the hook and it's just you and the fish.
Yeah, so it's honestly, I say this a lot and people laugh at me, whatever, but I feel like I black out sometimes when I get a muskie bite or I set the hook on one, because sometimes it's such a rare occasion. And people don't realize, so like, I know you talk about watching my content and I enjoy making it, but people don't realize the work that goes into how many trips I do that are unsuccessful, right? The behind the scenes stuff, the just going out and trying to learn things and try new things. A lot of times with social media and the internet, all you see is success stories, right? But there's a lot that goes into it, and I always tell people that want to get into it, I mean, that's probably the number one fish that people start and quit. Even if you look on Facebook Marketplace, you'll see a lot of musky fishing gear for sale all the time, because people watch videos and like, oh, I want to go do that, and then they realize, well, this isn't any fun because I just fished all day and didn't even get a bite, right? But that's part of it. But it's honestly, I feel like I black out sometimes because it's a really different experience because it is such an aggressive fish. It's such an elusive fish. It's a sought after fish that people spend a lot of time and energy and money trying to chase to catch. And then when you hook into one, it's just like, it's kind of an unreal feeling, honestly, just to catch it, get a photo and send it back. It's a different experience for sure.
We're talking with Luke Pawloski of the Outdoor Conquest. Check out his YouTube channel, The Outdoor Conquest. Luke does a wonderful job. I got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. Luke, when we come back, though, I want to talk more about this whole concept of documenting these outdoor adventures, why you do it, what goes into it. I know, look, as a guy who did outdoor television for many years, I know how much work goes into these. And when I see your content and the quality of it, I realize you're putting a lot of time into it. Check out the Outdoor Conquest on YouTube. When we come back, we'll wrap up our conversation with Luke. Then, after that, we'll wrap up the hour with Kris Duerson of Rapid River Knives. And I said in the opening segment, look, I don't want to push us into the end of the year too quickly. Let's enjoy the time we have, every day. But, boy, if you're going to get a Rapid River knife for Christmas, now is the time to order it. So lots more coming up in this opening hour of Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Carroll on two stations, WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM and north of the bridge. Let's go to Escanaba, WCHT 600 AM 93.5 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Why buy a bunch of different sets of expensive hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set and snap on and zip on an outdoor shell of a different camo pattern in less than a minute? If you need big sizes, 4, 5, 6X, VersaSkins is there for you. If you are a saddle hunter, VersaSkins makes jackets specifically for saddle hunting. Go to the website versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. Or go to Amazon.com and do a search for VersaSkins brand. VersaSkins. Change your skin for the season you're in. Now, right now, many of us are in the deer hunting season. And Luke Pawloski of the Outdoor Conquest may well do that next week for the opener, but right now he's still in a fishing mode. If you go to his YouTube channel, the Outdoor Conquest on YouTube, you can see his most recent video. Jigging for giant muskie on the Detroit River. Luke, I'm just looking at that right now. Again, excellent work. How many cameras do you have out there in the boat with you?
Normally I just have two, but a lot of times I may have, depending on what I'm doing, I'll run 3 different angles, depending on if it's worth running the third one, like a point of view style chest type of camera. I try to avoid the chest type camera, though, because honestly it's you don't get as many good shots from that more times than not, right? It's more or less you just see the hands block the lens, your fishing reel blocks the lens, and everything gets blocked. So I try to avoid that, but I will use that occasionally.
Why do you do this? Why do you put this time into making this content to share with people that, I don't know, I feel like, as you said, oftentimes people don't realize the work that goes into it. But then because you're on anti-social media, I suspect you're going to get people who are going to criticize what you're doing. Why put yourself out there like that?
You know, I ask myself that question frequently. More times than probably people think, you know, but it's even as a kid, I enjoyed just, recording things like that, just things outdoors, even when I was younger and we had a farm and stuff, and I would go, this is before trail cameras, right? Like I would go sit in my tree stand and videotape the activity I was seeing before season opened, deer season and stuff. And it's something, honestly, I wish I would have started a long time ago, but I am glad I did eventually make the leap and start video. And I do all my own editing and that type of stuff on my own, right? So it does consume a lot of time on top of having a family and a normal job, right? But I just enjoy doing it. Now, yeah, I do deal with opposition especially when it comes to live scope. But I've learned to deal with that better because there's 2 ways I handle it. If somebody gets really aggressive, I just block them and be done with it. Yeah. That way I don't need their negativity on my content, right? But I've learned that controversy is really good for social media because it creates conversations within conversations in the comment sections, right? And what that does is show these algorithms that it's content that people are enjoying because they're engaging with it, whether it's negative or positive, either way. But I mean, people will legit have arguments in my comment section, and I just let them go to town. But if it gets to a point where it's out of control, I just end it by blocking them, and then they can be done with it.
Yeah, move on. These fish we're getting on the Detroit River are giant. They're big, beautiful, giant fall muskies. How long, Luke, will you target these fish? How long will they be in the river?
They're just starting to move in, honestly, and I'm going to be there until the season closes. So it's kind of a gray area, Mike. With the muskie on Lake St. Clair being really, it's a world-class muskie fishery, but it's not stocked. Like you go to Wisconsin, Minnesota, these states like that, they have stocking programs for muskie. A lot of their lakes are stocked. Lake St. Clair is not a stocked musky lake. So people really they're really protective of the fish, rightfully so. They have a season, first Saturday in June, and then it ends sometime, I think, the last day of December. It's a catch and keep season, right? You can keep one a year. I believe the slot limit's like 46 to 48 inches, but you're only allowed one a year. But after that, it's catch and release season all year round. But none of the guys fish in the outside of the catch and keep season. They just they try to give the fish a chance to survive, and then the spawning season is, in May, throughout May, April and May. So even though you have great opportunity, none of the guys, and nobody fishes for them until the season opener, which is the first Saturday of June.
Okay, so after the firearm season coming up here next week, what will you turn your attention to? What will you target then?
I'm going to continue on with the musky vertical jigging presentation as well as casting, because they are becoming extremely predictable right now, which is tough to believe with a muskie, right? But they are putting the quote unquote feed bag on, and you can get them to bite in outside of their normal windows. And right now is the chance to legitimately catch a 50-pounder. I've yet to catch a 50-inch muskie, and that's been one of my goals, but I couldn't imagine a 50-pounder, but that's how big they get leading up into the winter.
Good luck to you, Luke. I will watch your endeavors online on the Outdoor Conquest. Great content on some very, very interesting adventures. We'll take a break. Kris Duerson of Rapid River coming up. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Port Huron, WPHM, 1380 AM. And north of the bridge, let's go to the Sioux, WKNW, 1400 AM. If I make this noise right here, what do you think that is? One more time. Okay, if you've been with me at all, you know what sound that is. That is the sound of my Rapid River knife locking back open. I just took it out of my pocket. Rapid River knives, handmade by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Kris Duerson is the man behind Rapid River, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Kris, welcome back. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning, Mike.
Busy yet, Kris? Busy this time of year?
Yeah, that's an understatement. It's hard to even get me on the phone.
Oh, I know. I know. and I hate to be one of those people who, the minute we're past Halloween, starts harping on Christmas. I really resent that. It's like, you know what? Let's enjoy where we're at and gradually work our way to that wonderful season of Christmas. But when you're talking about a Rapid River knife, if you're going to get one of these things for Christmas season, I wanted to let people know, don't drag your feet. Now is probably the time of year to order them, isn't it, Kris?
Yeah, absolutely. We get people that in the past drug their feet and waited and didn't get one, start shopping when they're on their summer trips up to our retail store in April, May, and June. So, and we will have. Last year it was real. We shut it down. No guaranteed knives delivered to you by Christmas after December 2nd. So this year we're tracking right at the same thing, if not even earlier. Maybe even after Thanksgiving, where it's just too hard to guarantee a handmade product when we just have such a high demand for it.
Well, and you and I have talked about this before. In today's world of Amazon, where you make an order and you get it the next day, society has been kind of spoiled. But we're talking about handmade pieces of art, made by your craftsmen. It's a different timetable.
It's very difficult. So I get people that order knives on a Friday and they don't have it Tuesday morning, and they're in my inbox and they're voicemails, and they're just, and it's rude. It's rude stuff. It's not nice. Hey, how you doing? So yeah, a lot of our knives, we hand make even the handle material, just like your knife that we do for you. We even make the handle material out of maple burl and all these acrylics, and so it's very time consuming. It's we love to do it, but it just takes time, and with time comes quality. So you just have to keep that in mind when you're looking for a Christmas gift. There's still plenty of time. You know, you got about 3 to 4 weeks left to order it for guaranteed delivery before Christmas.
And the website you would do that at is rapidriverknifeworks.com, rapidriverknifeworks.com. If you use the promo code MikeAvery15, you can get a 15% discount, which, Chris, I think is a pretty substantial discount. But I think the best way to do this is to stop by the store on US 2 just east of Rapid River, maybe when you're up north deer hunting or whatever. But if you stop by the store, you know you're going to walk out with a knife in your pocket.
Possibly. Our store actually now looks like we've been robbed. Right? Order the knife. If you want it, order it. We literally need you to order it. We've about for the last 2.5 to 3 months, we have been a merchandise store. Wow. We got hit so hard nationally, just nationwide, for demand for our products that our retail store has suffered in the amount of products that we actually have on our shelves. So we're working on it. We're up to 27 full-time knife makers now. I've got 3 more people starting next week, but trying to bring that back to the experience of stopping in our store too, but you have to order it.
I appreciate you letting me know that. I will make sure to push people that direction. Well, congrats on your success, Chris.
It's amazing and stressful at the same time.
yeah, I can imagine.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, listen, you mentioned the Avery signature knife. I love this knife. I'm looking at mine right now. Just a reminder, the proceeds from this knife go to Outdoor Driven, a group formed to get first responders and vets on outdoor adventures. But you're not honoring the Avery discount on this knife, Chris.
No, only because all of the proceeds go to that organization, and I've really been following some of the things they do with it. They did that, or they're getting ready to do that doe hunt and the waterfowl hunt and all the different ways of getting these guys, men and women, outdoors. I mean, I think it's phenomenal. So no, we're not doing the Avery 15 off of the Signature Series knife just because we'd be making the knife for nothing, essentially, as far as giving them the proceeds.
And that's why we're not doing that. So Mike Avery 15 on everything on the website at rapidriverknifeworks.com, except for the Avery signature knife. This knife has been selling very well. I'm hearing from a lot of people who love this knife. So, Chris, thanks for working with me on that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike.
All right, Chris, we'll talk again soon. Kris Duerson of Rapid River Knife Works, rapidriverknifeworks.com, rapidriverknifeworks.com. Hey, feel free to stop by the showroom and see what's there. But as Chris said, don't expect to see shelves full of knives. If you want a knife from Rapid River, go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.com. Use the promo code MikeAvery15. If you want that knife guaranteed for Christmas, do it soon, but don't use the promo code on the Avery signature knife. I'm going to be ordering some Avery signature knife for some surprise Christmas gifts myself, but don't say anything to anybody. It's a surprise. All right, we'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, Chad Stewart from the DNR talking about the whitetail rut.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction. And welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across our great state of Michigan. And I do think, and I say this every week, but I believe this sincerely, the best way to listen to the show, if you can, is on your local radio station, your local AM or FM affiliate. If you can't, if your local station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, it's nice to know that there is a backup. And what is that backup? It's a podcast, right? Everybody has a podcast, and there is a podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show. The content is exactly the same, but I don't release the podcast version of the show until after the broadcast stations have had a chance to listen to it, to air it, that is. You can hear the podcast on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I also put it on the Facebook page, and it's on all of the usual podcast outlets like Amazon, Audible, Twitter, now called X, LinkedIn, Apple Music, Google Play, iHeart, SoundCloud, yada, 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 yada. It's even on YouTube. I do like podcasting, though. I think podcasting is a great way to reach people these days. You don't need a television studio like I had to in the old days. You don't even need a radio studio like I'm using these days. You could literally produce a podcast on the phone that is in your pocket right now. And if your content is good enough, you will develop an audience. I do podcasts each month for some of my advertising partners, including Killer Food Plots, Angler Quest Boats, and Offshore Tackle. And when we're done here in the studio today with the radio show, we will record this month's Offshore Tackle podcast talking about giant walleye fishing in the late fall on Lake Erie. Ooh, can't wait for that one. But in the meantime, I was telling you earlier in the show that I've had a couple of experiences just around my house, believe it or not, as examples of the whitetail rut. I had a buck walk across the driveway in the middle of the night, and then the next morning, look out the window, and a buck has a doe pinned up against the house next to the arborvitaes. Later that afternoon, we saw that same buck chasing what I presume was the same doe around the neighborhood. Oh, it is a time in the whitetail woods that is almost magic, right? Things change. These bucks you've been seeing on camera in the middle of the night might become day walkers. It's your best chance of the year of seeing these bucks in the daytime. Now, there's a good chance you're not going to get a good look at them because it's going to be, boom, they're chasing a doe and gone. I am fascinated by the biological basis of this rut. And not being a biologist, I can't fully explain it to you. But Chad Stewart, who is a wildlife biologist with the Michigan DNR, can explain it, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Chad, welcome back. How have you been?
I've been great. I wish I was in the tree stand right now instead of talking with you, and that's not against you, but you're right. It's a great time to be in the woods.
I get it completely. If there was ever a time to be in the woods, it is right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great time. If you're a deer hunter, if you go out, if you're an archery hunter, if you enjoy going out with a crossbow, just the amount of activity you'll see in the previous week and coming week to 10 days right before firearm season is just it's something special, and it's something to it's hard to describe if you haven't experienced it yet.
So, we hear the term the rut. What is it? Is there a biological or a scientific description or explanation what's going on?
Yeah, no, very, very much so. So the rut is essentially the term that's used for hoofed animals, ungulate breeding period. Most wildlife have a time of the year, a season when breeding occurs, and that for whitetail deer is occurring right now. And the reason that occurs is through years of evolution, right? It's meant ultimately to have and synchronize fawn drop or parturition at the time of the year in the summer when resources are at their max or are growing and going to head toward their max, and that's to benefit the female doe to support the energetic requirements for lactation. Lactation is one of the most energetically demanding biological functions a mammal can go through. And they need to have a lot of resources available, calories available to support that effort. So when you factor in that a gestation period for whitetail deer is just under about 200 days, that puts us right about at this time of year. And that's when many of the does are coming in to estrus and are getting ready to be bred to coincide with that parturition date about 200 days later.
And when these does come into heat, it drives the bucks absolutely crazy. How long does this rut, generic rut we talked about last? I mean, it starts basically about Halloween. How long does it continue, Chad?
Yeah, the actual cycle really, if you want to get really deep in the weeds and get really nerdy about this, I mean, the whole process really starts in early October, and not that you're seeing actual rutting behavior, but that's when the environmental cues start to create changes in whitetail deer. So these changes are brought about by reduced daylight. So what happens is you've got photoreceptors in the eye, and they start to account for fewer and fewer daylight hours. And basically by sort of about mid-September-ish, you'll start to see spikes in testosterone in whitetail deer, and that's all photo period related. And that creates a chain reaction of chemicals that get released into the brain of both males and females that start to initiate this rutting process. So that's when the antlers start to mineralize, the velvet comes off, and you start to see sign in the woods. You know, late September, early October, you start to see the buck rub starting to show up. You start to see scrapes starting to happen. And that's kind of like this pre-rut phase. And that's basically them preparing. Now, they're still very much in their sort of summer patterns, but that's really the initiation part. And then as you start to get into that mid-October period, the bucks start to wander around a little bit more. They start seeking, they start looking around a little bit more, trying to find some of those early does that might come in estrus a little bit early. And what you're in right now is probably a transition from that seeking phase to that chasing phase. And that's when the active breeding is starting to occur. And you're right, Halloween's a good peak, or the start of the peak. It's going to happen all this week, and it's going to start to tail off towards the end of next week. So you've got about a 2-week period when it's really sort of prime. You'll still get chasing involved as the firearm season goes in November 15th, but it's going to be on the downswing at that point.
So will a buck lock on a particular doe that is in estrus in heat? Will he stay with her throughout that entire cycle, her cycle?
It depends. And this is where it gets kind of interesting. So a doe is pretty much receptive to breeding for about a day and a half to 2 days. And there are chemical cues that the bucks are able to detect in the urine. So that's why early in October, those scrapes become active. The bucks can tell these chemical signals based on, where that doe is at, in terms of being receptive or how close she is, to being receptive to breeding. And once they find that doe and can lock onto they're chasing, they're trailing them. It could be a couple days, and then there's actually the breeding period that occurs. But some bucks are completely different. And this is, like I said, this is where it gets interesting. They'll breed once, maybe twice, and then they'll go on and look for another doe that's hot. But what that doe is still receptive and still able to breed for, part of that time. And there might be another opportunity for another buck to come in and breed. And it's really interesting that some research has shown that up to 20%, 25% of twin fawns are actually sired by different bucks.
Ha.
and that's because you've got bucks that don't lock down a doe for the entirety of the time that she's receptive. They'll breed and then they'll move on. But then
Chad,
that opens up the door for another buck to come in.
I hear exactly what you're saying, and I have a lot more questions, but you know how this works. I've got to take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. We're talking with Chad Stewart, DNR wildlife biologist, a big game specialist for elk, moose, and whitetails. The website for the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a break. More with Chad about this beautiful, amazing whitetail rut. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC, that's 99.7 FM, 1320 AM. And you can hear us, let's go north of the bridge. Let's go to Manistee, WTIQ, 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots. Now, look, I know you're not putting in food plots right now, but you just might be hunting over your food plots, right? Did they turn out the way you wanted? I realize we had a really, really dry fall that didn't help things at all. But just keep Killer Food Plots in mind next year when it's time to put in your food plots so you can have the maximum return for your hunting enjoyment right now. And also, check out the lineup of scents that the folks at Killer Food Plots have as well. It's killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. I was sitting over one of our food plots the other night, and right at dark, I saw a deer come through. He moved like a buck, and if you're a hunter, you know what I mean. But I couldn't put a rack on him, even though I was looking at him with binoculars. I just couldn't see the rack. It was just too dark. Didn't matter. It was 46 yards away, and that's just too far for a shot with my crossbow. Now, next week, when the firearm season starts, all bets are off. That's when the folks who have been out there for the last several weeks bow hunting, that's when we get our revenge. Because then, if you see a deer and he's within a realistic distance, you can take a shot. Right now, we're talking about the whitetail rut. With Chad Stewart of the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. Chad, is there a process in place in Mother Nature that prevents, say, inbreeding? Would a doe not stand for one of her offspring, even if it's years later and he's a mature buck at this point? Does Mother Nature prevent that from happening?
For the most part, yes. So typically what happens is that the yearlings from, the fawns from last year, usually by the spring, they get kicked out because there's, that mother's pregnant. She has new fawns coming in, and she doesn't want those new fawns to imprint on her young, because she wants to make sure that the mother, she herself is viewed as the mother with the milk and can provide the nutrition for them. So she kicks those fawns out. A lot of times they hang out sort of nearby, but usually after a while that yearling buck just sort of starts to head out. And he sort of makes his own path and usually teams up with a bunch of other younger bucks, and that's where you start to see those young buck bachelor groups start to emerge. Now, a lot of times that doe fawn doesn't go too far, and eventually once the fawns get old enough, that doe is receptive to rejoining the matriarchal group and will accept that. Any sisters, mothers, other daughters back into the group, and that's where you start to see those doe groups start to emerge. But usually those yearling bucks, they sort of take the hint by that spring and kick out, and they typically go in a completely different direction. So you don't usually see a lot of inbreeding because of some of those, the fawn successional and the birth that goes on from the spring.
Will a doe fawn from this spring breed, or do they have to be a year and a half?
They can, no, and it's more typical to see that in like southern Michigan. So the fawns typically have to get to be it's usually around 80 pounds, 85 pounds, but they can come into estrus. It's usually a little bit late, but they certainly can. I would say that probably about, again, 20 to 30% of our fawns in southern Michigan will actually be bred at some point, and they can be this year. So that's, again, amazing to think of, and sort of a testament to the sustainability of white-tailed deer in that they can breed so early, typically at like 6 or 7 months of age. Additionally, from a doe standpoint, there's no such thing as menopause. As long as they have another birthday under their belt, they can continue to get pregnant and have fawns. Doesn't matter if they're 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old, they will continue to get pregnant.
Man,
as you get further north,
they're machines, right? I mean, Mother Nature has designed these critters just to keep populating themselves.
They are designed perfectly to maximize the number of individuals on the landscape, which is, again, why hunting and management is so important, because their numbers can increase quite dramatically in very short time. And, if you go into a lot of different communities where hunting is prohibited or restricted, you start to see those trends and talk to people. And it's like, the number of deer we've seen, over the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years is so much more than what it was before. And it's largely because they're incapable of being managed properly through, traditional hunting methods.
How far will a buck roam when he's chasing these does? What's the range of a buck during the rut? And does it change drastically from, the fall when they're in these bachelor groups to now during the rut?
Yeah, the bucks are generally, as you can imagine, homebodies throughout most of the year. So if you've got a buck that's, say, sticking to about a square mile of an area, once you get to the rut, all bets are off. I've seen individual collar data where they've made a 10-mile round trip adventure over the course of an evening. It's usually probably increases to about 3 to 5 square miles in terms of their activity rate during the rut, and that's why you typically see anywhere from 25 to 30% of their body weight being lost over a very short amount of time, because they are solely focused on breeding and finding does. They're expending a lot of energy walking, searching, fighting, breeding, and they're not having those calories come back in. So they build up all their body weight, and then they greatly reduce it during the rut, and then they spend most of December trying to recover.
Why do their necks swell up during the rut like they do?
Yeah, it's a lot of the hormones, the increase in testosterone that they're experiencing. So again, it's incredibly sort of interesting and complicated and really nerdy. And I don't know how much people are going to want to appreciate going into all the different discussions on gonadotropin releasing hormones and the hypothalamus.
Maybe I shouldn't have asked that question.
all those things, but it's in short, right? It's all about this massive surge in testosterone that occurs because you've got this sequence of hormones that continue to get released that eventually ends and culminates in this massive surge in testosterone that they are experiencing during that time. So that's why you start to see them just absolutely bulk up during the into the pre-rut and during the rut, and subsequently those hormones start to dissipate and pull back as it gets into December, and that triggers their casting of the antlers, and the breeding cycle essentially shuts down for them.
Is there such a thing as a second rut, or is that just a kind of a hunter's myth?
No, what happens is it's true. What happens is the does that are not bred, again, they are biologically designed to get pregnant, and if they do not get pregnant on their first estrus cycle, usually about 28 days later, and of course that varies a day or two on either end, they will come into estrus again. So it's not nearly as intense because most of those deer are getting bred on their first cycle. But when you have instances where you've got skewed buck to doe ratios and the bucks just simply can't service all of the does that are coming into heat or estrus at one time, some of them don't get bred. And then about a month later, they spike up again, and it reactivates that entire process again, albeit on a much lower and smaller scale.
What is the perfect...
You also start to get some...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well,
I was going to say the other thing you get is some of those fawns that are coming in later. Typically, they're not ready or don't have achieved the weight in late October, early November. So you start to get fawns that are getting to that weight finally, and they come into estrus a little bit later.
What is the ideal buck to doe ratio of a herd, and where are we in relationship to that here in Michigan?
The latter part, very much varies. You'd like to be around from the adult side of things. You'd like to be at about 2 to 1, or as close to 1 to 1 as you can get, because these animals are being born at a 1 to 1 ratio. Now the mortality rates for bucks are certainly much higher. On the hunting side of things, we take a lot more bucks than we do does, so that's certainly one influence. But then bucks just tend to get into more trouble, even outside of the hunting period. They just tend to be, especially as young bucks, whether it's button bucks, yearling bucks, they just tend to be a little bit more careless and find themselves getting struck by cars, sick, doing dumb things. So their mortality rates are just slightly a little bit higher. And that ultimately lends itself more towards a slightly skewed sex ratio of having more does on the landscape than bucks. It's pretty hard to get. You sit there and hear things like 8 to 1, 9 to 1. That's really difficult, if not impossible, to get to. A really bad one is probably about 4 or 5. But we'd like to keep around 2 to 1 to 2, as close to that as possible in terms of a sex ratio. And I think for the most part, we're close in most of the state in those areas, but ultimately we can certainly be doing better in many areas. And that's why you've seen so much communication in recent years about emphasizing antlerless harvest, doe harvest.
Well, that's a different topic, Chad, and we're out of time on this one. Listen, I appreciate you indulging my geekiness on this topic. And next time we talk, maybe next time we'll talk about the hard political and the hard topics in deer hunting in general. But thanks for just shooting the breeze on the biological end of it this time. Chad Stewart of the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. When we come back, Sergeant Mike Mshar, again, of the DNR. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear the show in Sandusky in the Thumb, WMIC. 2 stations, 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ, 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. Now, we had Kris Duerson of Rapid River on in the first hour, and he said, because normally I send people either go to the website rapidriverknifeworks.com or go to the showroom on US 2 just east of Rapid River. Kris says if you want to go to the showroom and stop by and say hi, fine. He says, but we look like we've been robbed right now. They're selling knives like crazy. So if you want a Rapid River knife in time for Christmas, order it here very, very soon. The website, rapidriverknifeworks.com, rapidriverknifeworks.com. Use the promo code MikeAvery15 and get 15% off your entire order. Now, that promo code is not good for the Mike Avery signature knife because we want to keep all the profits into that knife that we can. Chris is not making any money on that knife. I'm not making any money on the knife. The proceeds from the Avery signature knife go to Outdoor Driven. That is a group that was formed to get first responders and vets on outdoor adventures to help them deal with some of the crap that they've had to deal with throughout their career. So rapidriverknifeworks.com is the place to go. I have a soft spot in my heart for law enforcement. I will admit this, okay? My dad was a cop for 35 years, so I grew up around police, around cops. They were always at the house. The picnics and stuff were always law enforcement, so I have a soft spot there. So that's the perspective I come from, and I'll tell you that right now. Our guest this segment on the Outdoor Magazine show is a law enforcement professional. His name is Sergeant Mike Mshar. He is with the DNR. He's a game warden, a conservation officer, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Hey, Sarge, let me ask you, the term game warden, from your perspective, is that derogatory or is it an okay term?
No, it's a fine term. It's what a lot of the Western states use, and it's been used for a long time. So we just, in Michigan, we've always gone by conservation officer, but game warden's a fine term.
All right. So, Sarge, as we get closer to this firearm season that starts next weekend now, I got to believe you and your people are just busy as can be, but there's certain things that you're looking for, certain things you want us as hunters to keep in mind. What are they?
Well, obviously with the firearm season coming up, the biggest thing, the number one thing is safety. We want everybody to be safe. I want everybody to go out, have a good time, enjoy your hunt, but come home. And every day we turn on the TV, me, myself, I see all these accidents happening, hunting-related accidents. And so safety's number one. Guns, loaded guns, people not being careful with guns when they're out and about or when, getting them in and out of a vehicle. So that's number one. But number two is everybody's hunting on tree stands, right? We've been doing it now for years, even during gun season. And I keep seeing people fall on tree stands. There's no reason for that. They sell those lifelines, and I use them. I've got them on every stand, and that will save your life. So that's the other one is, use a safety harness, use a lifeline up in those tree stands.
Yeah, if you tie into a lifeline on the ground, you use it on the way up while you're hunting and back down, you really can't fall. I mean, if you do fall, you're not going to fall more than a couple of feet. Yeah, those are absolute lifesavers. What about the concept of trespassing, Sarge? I mean, that's a real pain for you folks, isn't it? It's a common complaint.
That's probably one of the number one calls that we get year-round is trespass. And, people have to respect other people's private property. I always tell people, if you have permission on a piece of property, check every year. People sell their properties, and so every year, even me, I go back and check in with the landowner and say, hey, I still have permission. And there are times when somebody maybe bought it, somebody passed away and a family member bought it, and you no longer have permission. So, yeah, check every year, respect other people's property. That's a good question because that's our number one probably complaint year-round is trespass. And it's important to remember, too, if you shoot an animal that goes onto private property, you have to have permission to go get it. There's always that misnomer that everybody thinks you can just go get it because you drew blood. That's not it. You've got to have permission. So if it happens, go ask and get permission. Does the permission have to be written? Do we have to have that in our pocket? No, it does not. No, as long as you have a verbal, and if we had to, we could follow up with that landowner and they'd say, yep, I gave him permission. I've heard that too. People say, oh, you got to have written permission. No, it just has to be verbal. What about tagging? I know tagging is another concern. It's not really that tough to tag a deer the correct way, is it? I mean, how do you put the tag on the animal to stay legal? Right, exactly. So tagging's a big one. We see it every time when, people end up getting excited. They don't put their tag on it. They throw it in their truck. They bring it home. We get it. If you quick take a picture and your tag is not on it, okay, fine. But as soon as that animal's harvested, get the tag on there. If it's a buck, put it on the antlers, or you can put it on one of the hocks, but it's got to remain with it. I always tell people, throw a couple zip ties in your bag, in your backpack, and put a zip tie around that animal, and then take that tag and just stick it right to it, and it's not going anywhere.
We as hunters love this time of year. Do you guys as game wardens, do you love this too? Or is there such a workload facing you coming up over the next couple of weeks that you go, oh man, I kind of dread this?
No, it's we call it the game wardens season, the fall, and we love it because we love the outdoors, we love the resource. So my men and women that work for me and work for us, they look forward to it. They enjoy being out there. They like meeting the people. They like educating people. They really look forward to the fall. Absolutely. Just like you and I do for hunting. All
right, Sarge, have a good season. Appreciate your time. Thanks for the advice, and we'll be talking again. Sergeant Mike Mshar of the DNR. He is a game warden. He's a warden. Michigan.gov/DNR. We'll take a break. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery question. This is kind of interesting. This goes back to the moose lift, so that's a few years back. We'll talk about that and more coming up in the second hour of Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on more than 30 stations across this great state of Michigan. They including, I should say, News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN in Ludington. Let's go to WSJM 94.9 in St. Joe, and let's go north of the bridge to Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoors men and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. Now, the way the Ask Avery segment works, this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can send me a question that you want me to answer directly, or if you think maybe I have more access to somebody and can reach like MUCC or DNR easier, I can pass a question along to them as well. The best way to get these questions to me is to send me an email, not a social media message. Send me a good old-fashioned email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's what Otto Peterson did this week. He sent me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. He said, okay, Mike, I said, I know you were part of, or at least saw, Moose Lift 1 and 2 back when the state of Michigan sent turkeys to Canada for the moose. How are the turkeys doing? I know this show is about Michigan hunting and fishing. Just hope the turkeys did well from our end as well. Because, and thank you, Otto. I appreciate that. And by the way, Otto is a very, very cool name. Yeah, let's go back and talk about Moose Lift. Mid-'80s, 84, 86, 85, 87, somewhere in there. And we, the people of Michigan, the state of Michigan, the DNR, traded some turkeys to Ontario for moose. Now, I think we did pretty good on that, right? Traded turkeys for moose. I think we came out on top. The DNR went to Algonquin Provincial Park, and they captured moose there. And the way they captured them was a group called the Kiwi Cowboys. They went in helicopters. They flew over the Canadian wilderness, and they shot nets out of guns from these choppers. These guys were hanging out of helicopters, and they shot nets over these moose, and then DNR crews would fly in with choppers. And if it was a bull, they'd cut the rack off. They would, I think they tranquilized the animals. They did something else. Then they brought them back to base camp at the Algonquin Provincial Park headquarters, put them in crates. They were upright crates. They were standing upright. They put several on the back of flatbed trucks, and then they drove those moose across the border back to the Pawloski grade west of Marquette, if I remember right, and they let them go there. And I was at both ends of this thing. It was a very, very fascinating project. So in answer to the question, okay, we know how the Michigan moose are doing. They're doing okay, not great. They're doing okay. I reached out to the DNR, and Dustin Eisenhoff says, in answer to your Canadian turkey question, it was not exactly a one-to-one relationship, meaning we did not trade one turkey for one moose. I don't know what the exact formula was. I bet there were several turkeys for one moose. He said we did trade turkeys for moose, like you said. But when Ontario was reintroducing turkeys, they got them from multiple sources, not just Michigan. Now, if you go now to the the Ontario DNR website and look up turkey season, they now have a spring season and a fall season. So turkeys are apparently doing very well there. Now, what role did the Michigan turkeys play in that exactly? Nobody quite knows. Dustin says the turkeys are doing very well there, but we are just part of the story and not the only source in their effort. Beyond that, Dustin really didn't know. Now, I was thinking, who was involved in this? There was a guy named Ralph Bailey, who was a DNR wildlife biologist, who was involved on the Michigan side. I don't think Ralph is even with us anymore. There was Steve Schmidt, who was the DNR wildlife veterinarian at that point. I was searching my files for a number for Steve, because Steve has since retired. I could not come up with a number for Steve using an old Charlie Rood term, searching my Rolodex, as he said a couple of weeks ago. I couldn't come up with a number for Steve either. So the people who were directly involved are not accessible to me or easily accessible to me at this point. So I think we've got to just say, look, at our turkeys and turkeys from some other states did very well. It established a turkey population in Ontario to the point where they now have a spring season and a fall season. So it's a win-win. Although I think we came out on top by getting moose for turkeys. The Michigan moose population, that's an interesting story. There is a project going on right now where the DNR has captured and collared some moose. The original moose that were brought in did have collars on them. Of course, those original moose are long since gone. There's a new batch of moose that have collars on them to try to figure out what is going on with the population. When the first moose lift happened, they told us, and Safari Club was intimately involved in this too, as far as funding this. The reason Safari Club got involved is we were told that there would be 1,000 moose in the UP by the year 2000, and we would have a hunting season. Well, it's the year 2025, and there are about 300 moose there. So what happened? We're trying to figure it out. Thank you, Otto Peterson, for sending the question. You can send me a question if you want. Email Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And thank you, Security Credit Union, for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 3, Michigan outdoorsman Gabe VanWormer on making the transition from bow season into the upcoming rifle season, and more in hour 3.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yater Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, The Forward Corporation, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Hammond Drives and Equipment, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is Mike Avery, the big guy, here in hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across our great state of Michigan during what could be called the single most exciting time of year in the outdoors here in our great state of Michigan. What is it? What time is that? It is the whitetail rut, and it's this last week now before we move into the firearm deer season. I'm not as hardcore of a deer hunter as I used to be. I'm getting back into it. I do enjoy it. I enjoy doing it because when I'm out there in the woods, I am continuing the tradition of Michigan deer hunting. More importantly to me, I am continuing my family tradition of deer hunting. My grandpa was a deer hunter. My dad was a deer hunter. Darn good deer hunter. I am a deer hunter. My son James is a deer hunter. My grandkids are deer hunters. So there's several generations of my family that have been and are deer hunters. So for that, to me, that is why I deer hunt. I'm not as hardcore as I used to be, and I'm certainly not an expert. I do not pretend to be an expert at all. I am a passionate participant in the world of deer hunting. But as far as going out there and really knowing what I'm doing, I got to be honest. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I do enjoy it. I have much respect for people that I know, that I look at, who are what I consider to be genuine deer hunting experts. Gabe VanWormer is one of those guys. You know Gabe. He's been around the outdoor scene here in Michigan for many, many years. He works on the Fishing 411 TV show. He works with the Michigan Out of Doors TV show. And he's got an outstanding channel on YouTube called Full Quiver Outdoors. And Gabe, just to rub it in, was out there in the woods this morning, and he shoots video of this, what I consider to be a real nice buck walking by, and he just lets him walk on by. He was not up to Gabe's standards. Gabe's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Gabe, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's November in Michigan.
It
Can't
is
be much
November, and the bucks are going crazy right now, aren't they?
Well, you wouldn't know it by this morning. I saw one. That's the only one I saw. It was kind of crazy, but yeah, it's been real good lately.
Isn't it interesting in that deer hunting in general and the rut in particular, and I guess harvesting an animal, is so personal, it's so subjective, and it can change so much from day to day and from one section to another.
Oh, for sure. I was texting with my brother. He's seen like 8 or 9 bucks this morning, and I've seen one. So apparently I picked the wrong spot this morning. It is amazing how much different it can be just down the road from you.
But you've had a really good season so far, haven't you?
I have. I have had a wonderful season. Took a buck early, pretty early, like second week of the season. And, one thing I'm more kind of a little more proud of is I've taken kind of I don't know what you call it, a grand slam, a triple slam. I've taken one of every color phase of squirrel this year, a brown one, a black one, and a gray one with a reeker, with a longbow. So I think that was more challenging than the buck.
Well, I have so much respect for you out there with that longbow, and you also took a turkey this year during the season. Now, a fall turkey, was that?
I did.
Did you target that bird? Were you turkey hunting, or was it a harvest of just being in the right place at the right time and having the tag in your pocket?
I was not turkey hunting for the first hour of that hunt, and then I was a turkey hunter, and then I wasn't. So I always have a turkey tag in my pocket when it comes to the fall, and when one wanders by, all of a sudden I switch hats, and I'm a turkey hunter for a few minutes. So, yeah, it works out really nice sometimes.
So were you in a tree stand with your longbow that day?
I was, yes. I was in a tree stand, and they just happened to feed by me, and took a chance at one and got it.
Good for you. Good for you. And this buck you took earlier in the season, I'm looking at your YouTube channel right now, Full Quiver Outdoors. Is that the double beam buck that I'm seeing that you took earlier?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he's a buck I saw in the summertime and had some trail cam pictures of him. And I had bigger bucks during the summer, but that one just has a lot of character to him. And I like those bucks that, are not just 8 point something like that. And I was really hoping I'd get a crack at him, and just blessed to be able to put an arrow in him. That's for sure.
Looking at your content here, I mean, everything from this double beam buck to this really cool movable hunting blind to testing a new cartridge. I mean, you've got your fingers in just about everything, Gabe.
Don't ask my wife that. My wife says I got way too many hobbies, but yes, I definitely have a lot of different hobbies. I love to shoot guns. I love to hunt. I love to fish. A little bit of everything.
I know you have been instrumental in field testing the 41 Great Lakes. Is that the real deal? Is that as good as it sounds?
Oh yeah, Yeah, it's I mean it's very impressive. I've shot deer out beyond 300 yards with it. Took several deer with a handgun in 41 Great Lakes beyond 200 yards.
Jeez.
And it's it's the real deal. I mean, it puts them down. I mean, a couple that I've shot at 300 yards, I've dropped them. One of them went, maybe 20 yards, but yeah, it's very impressive. Very impressive. I like it.
Don't you do anything the easy way? I mean, you're bow hunting with a long bow. You like to gun hunt with a handgun. I mean, come on, Gabe. There are easier ways to get this done.
I think my dad got me doing that. You're talking about family heritage, and it goes way back in my family as well. And he always was, back in the day when we had tree stands that were just made out of plywood and rope, and he loved to bow hunt more so than gun hunt, and I think he just kind of instilled that in me. And so whether it's fly fishing or handgun hunting or bow hunting or just I like a challenge, and it's a lot of fun to do that.
So are you more of a bow hunter or are you more of a gun hunter?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm a bow hunter. I would take bow hunting over gun hunting any day. In fact, come opening day of deer season here in Michigan, I'll probably be around for one day, maybe two, videotaping, and then I'm going to head out of state bow hunting again. So I don't typically stick around for our gun season a whole lot. I head out west.
Why is that? Do you not like the sharing the woods with the Orange Army, or
back, a few years ago, it was because the property I hunted, the family hunted it, so different, the people that owned it, their family came out. And so I just couldn't hunt it. I just wasn't allowed to. So that's how it started. But I found that if I leave this state and go out of state, I can find really good hunting with a bow, during gun season. So, bow hunting is my passion. So that's what I've been doing for many, many, many years. Last year was the first year I shot a deer on opening day of gun season, and I don't know, 20 years, 25 years, something like that. So, yeah.
Will you take your longbow on these Western hunts?
Yes. Yeah. I kind of quit compound cold turkey about 15 years ago or so. The guy that builds these bows that I shoot, he lives in Ovid, Michigan here, just up the road from me, and goes to my church. And I think he kind of thought it was a fad, like I'd get into it, and but I didn't. I dropped the compound, and I knew if I took the compound once and then took a longbow once in a while, I would probably fall back into the compound. So I just said forget it and put the compound away and picked up a stick bow, and it was a struggle, but it was very rewarding, and it has been over the years.
Yeah, that's a commitment when you decide you're going to go on these Western hunts where there's a lot at stake and a lot of expense and a lot of time wrapped up, and you're still using the longbow and not even a recurve. Why a longbow over a recurve?
It just happens to be what my buddy builds, and he builds really high quality ones that shoot really well. So to me, it just, I don't know. It felt natural and it shot well. So that's what I stuck with. I've got both. I've got recurves, I've got longbows, but I really like these 2-Trax longbows made right here in Michigan. And that's why I stuck with it, just because it happened to be what was built right near me. So,
well, I bet your buddy thanks you for that too, because you've been a great proponent and a great advertiser for him.
He's a great guy. He is, and he built some fantastic bows. Yeah, he's been real happy over the years.
Excellent. Hey, Gabe, hang tight. You know how this works. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. We're talking with Gabe VanWormer. You can learn more about him online. Just do a search for Gabe VanWormer or go to Full Quiver Outdoors on YouTube. The guy makes some absolutely outstanding videos. When we come back, I want to talk to Gabe about a couple of things. Number one, hunting the rut, because we've got about another week of hunting the rut before the firearm season starts. And then, even though Gabe isn't much of a gun hunter, I want to talk to him about making the transition from bow season into the firearm season. The man is well versed. He is an expert at hunting and angling, and I'm sure any question I have, Gabe can answer it. We'll find out after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. You can hear us in Tawas on two stations, WIOS AM 1480 AM and 106.9 FM. And you can hear us in Traverse City, WTCM 580 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let them create an outdoor getaway in your backyard and maintain your property. This is the time of year for maintenance, fall cleanup, sprinkler blowout, dormant season pruning. And Reader has discounts on those too. If you can use the promo code Avery10 and get 10% off on that. How cool is that? Oh, what else is going on? The folks at Reader were at my house the other day. They were knocking down the brush. I thought I was doing something really smart, right? By having the brush knocked down between the yard and the pond. Well, the minute that the brush was removed, the two resident beavers saw some trees that I had left standing and decided that's what they wanted to eat. I mean, within 2 days, they had those trees down. So maybe that wasn't such a good idea. But you can't blame the Reader people for that, right? Reader has been doing this for 60 years, so you know they're doing something right. They're in this transition mode right now. They're cleaning up the fall, doing the fall cleanup, and they're looking forward to this season. Charlie, I'm not going to say it. The season that follows this one, it starts with W. What is it? Charlie won't even say it either. But it's the next season coming up that has snow and cold. Well, the folks from Reader can help you plow that white stuff and get rid of that too. So the website, readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. I won't say it either, Charlie. It's just too early to even think about it. So, all right, right now we're talking with Gabe VanWormer. Gabe is an icon in the outdoor industry, the outdoor world here in Michigan. He works on the Fishing 411 TV show. He works on the Michigan Out of Doors TV show. He's very active online. Check out his full Quiver Outdoors YouTube channel. Gabe, it's kind of cool to be able to make a living at something you love so much, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You go to work every day just loving it. Like, I didn't really want to come out of the woods to do a radio show.
But you did, although you could have done it from your tree stand. That would have been pretty cool.
I think I would have had to be pretty quiet to do that.
Well, yeah, you would have. So, hunting the rut this next week or so, it's different than hunting the early season. How do we take advantage of what's going on in the whitetail woods right now? How do we approach this?
Absolutely. I think it comes down to bedding areas. I am constantly trying to understand which bedding areas are being used more. If I can possibly get between two bedding areas that are nearby each other, you get those bucks cruising back and forth, and then middle of the day, they'll rut pretty hard. They'll chase does all morning long, and then they'll lay down for an hour, and then they'll figure out, oh man, I haven't checked that other bedding area in a while. I better go check that. And they'll get up in the midday and they'll move again. And so to me, this time of year, I want to be between bedding areas, and I want to get in early, way before the does start moving back from the fields. I want to be near those bedding areas before the neighbors start moving in. We on highly pressured areas where there's a lot of neighbors, and oftentimes I'll be in my tree stand for 15, 20 minutes, doing half an hour, and all of a sudden I'll see their lights bobbing through the woods, heading back to their stands, and the deer come running into the bedding areas I'm hunting. So that's another thing I like to do. So
you're using neighboring pressure to actually help you out.
Absolutely. Yep. The other day I had a guy cutting wood in the over the weekend, and so he was keeping the deer out of his woods, and I knew the other neighbor was probably going to be hunting upwind of one area, so I chose my stand for that reason, and I had a pretty good set. So if you have a lot of pressure around your area, you definitely can use that to your advantage if you understand the lay of the land.
That's interesting. We have so many areas here in Michigan. Our state is so heavily hunted that much of our state is indeed heavily pressured whitetails. You're saying that's not necessarily a negative. You can use it to your advantage.
Well, I usually get a negative all season long. I'm wishing that it wasn't so pressured, but
yeah.
For those guys that don't have pressured land, they can give me a call and give me coordinates.
No, get in line behind me, buddy. I was
other than that, yeah.
I was sitting out the other night, and about a half hour before dark, all these gunshots, and I'm thinking, Well, it's your property. You can do what you want, right? But why are you choosing this half hour before sunset to do your sighting in? And then I'm also thinking, well, are you truly sighting in? If you are sighting in, why did you wait till a half hour before sunset? And it was like, Gabe, it was almost like the opening day of gun season. I mean, they were shooting in 3 different directions around me. So you got to wonder sometimes, don't you?
Man, sometimes you just don't know what's going on. That's for sure. Yeah, I don't know.
So when you see a buck this time of year, is he normally on the trail of a doe, and is he normally moving? I mean, how do you get him to stop this time of year?
When I'm hunting with my longbow, I really need them close. So a lot of times I'm putting out mock scrapes. And even if a buck is on a doe and they happen to come by, a lot of times he'll stop in that mock scrape and just at least take a sniff. Or the doe sometimes will come over and take a sniff too. So mock scrapes are a good thing, but typically this time of year, they are just, the buck has nothing, he doesn't care about anything but that doe. So it's all about where that doe is going to go, and a lot of times she gets all frazzled because she's being chased, and she just goes for a thick area or tries to get away from them, and it's just, this time of year, it's just a chance thing. I mean, it's just being near where the deer want to be in the thick areas and hoping, praying that they'll come by you.
Do you subscribe to the theory that this time of year, a midday hunt is not a bad idea?
Absolutely. I mean, if you can't hunt the morning or something like that, then just head out when you can hunt. On my way home today, I was driving out today, and I saw 2 or 3 bucks that were out in the fields tending does or pushing does around. So it definitely is a good idea to be in the woods. It doesn't matter what time of day, just be in the woods.
On those mock scrapes, how big do you make those physically? Or how big around are they?
It just depends on where it is. In an open wood situation, like between bedding areas, like where I'm at, I want the deer to be able to see it from a long ways, so I don't hesitate to make it 6 feet in diameter. Just big areas, even if there's not an overhanging branch, if you can't get one close to your tree stand, just make a big open area of dirt, and deer will go to those and take a look at them and smell them, and they're just interested.
Do you put scent in those?
Not usually.
Really?
Usually the pheromones in scent kind of evaporate very quickly anyways, so you definitely can. But typically I just kick the leaves out and try to scratch up the dirt so that they can smell the dirt, and they'll smell that fresh dirt, and they'll come over and investigate, and oftentimes in a couple of days you'll have natural scent in it anyways. So
that's a great tip then, Gabe. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. What about then, I know you said that, come Michigan's firearm season, you're going to be heading out of state, but for us hunters who are sticking around, how do we make the transition from the archery season into this rifle season? I mean, most of us are hunting the same area, probably even the same stands. We just got a different tool in our hands. How do we approach this? What is our mindset? How does it change?
Absolutely. Yeah. To me, when I stay for gun season, it often comes down to what I have in my hands. If I'm hunting with a handgun, a lot of times it's very similar, but most people don't. And to me, I would back off just a little bit from those bedding areas, even 50, 60 yards, and try to look for the more open lanes. You want to be able to have your shot opportunities, where you can make a good shot. And so a lot of times those archery setups may not be the best setup because you just can't see as far. So I don't hesitate to go into, say, an open woods, go up in a climber or get up high in a tree stand a little higher than I would normally would with a gun, or, holding a gun in my hand, and be able to shoot to those bedding areas. You might be able to even cover a couple of them instead of just one, when you're sitting with an archery equipment. So just backing off from those a little bit sometimes is a good place to be.
And will you have, I don't remember, are you going to have a bow in your hand opening day or a handgun in your hand for rifle season?
I'll probably have a handgun because I'm not limited a whole lot. I mean, I can shoot a handgun just about as far as I can shoot a rifle. So to me, it doesn't really matter much. But if I still have a tag and if I'm hunting and not videotaping somebody, I probably will sit out and, where I can see some areas and make sure I'm in there way, way early because, again, those people are heading in you got to get in before everybody else gets in. I don't care if you're sitting up in your tree stand playing on your phone for an hour and a half. As long as you're in there before the other people and they can push the deer to you, you're in a better situation.
You can hunt. You can shoot a handgun as far as your rifle. That's crazy.
Well, if you have the right setup and you practice, it's not super crazy. It's just, practicing with what you got. And the specialty pistol that I'm shooting has a rifle scope on it, so it really doesn't limit me a whole lot. I'm shooting that 41 Great Lakes out of an old XP 100 action, old bolt action Remington that was made back in the 80s, and I just rebarreled it to that 41 Great Lakes, and I feel comfortable out to 300 yards as long as I can keep steady.
300 yards. Gabe, you're amazing. You truly are. You truly are. You're a very, very cool guy. I love the fact that you concentrate on doing things the hard way. I also love the fact that you love to share these experiences, document these experiences, put them on your YouTube channel and your social media outlets. I enjoy it, and I know a lot of people do as well, Gabe. You keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Gabe VanWormer of Full Quiver Outdoors. Again, check out his YouTube channel and just follow him online. He's a very, very interesting guy. He's a very talented guy. Again, you can see his work on the Fishing 411 TV show. Charlie, did I get my times wrong? I did? 1 minute left. I could have been talking to Gabe for another minute yet. All right, you can follow him on his Fishing 411 TV adventures. He's a cameraman. He's a video guy. He's a shooter. We used to call him in the old day for them, but these days you probably can't use that term. And also on a Michigan Outdoors TV as well. And check out the YouTube channel, Full Quiver Outdoors. That's Full Quiver Outdoors. Also, I think Gabe's probably hung up by now, so I can probably say this. Charlie, did he hang up? Okay. He is, when I eventually do retire, and it's not going to be anytime soon, okay? I've been kind of poking around the outdoor industry for people who might be interested in hosting a TV or a radio show after I'm gone. Gabe is one of the guys I've been talking to, and he's kind of interested in it, but we won't talk about that anymore. All right, we'll take a break here at the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, a few more things to talk about, including, I got to follow up on this. I've been really bothered by this past week about infighting in the hunting community and how I think we are our own biggest enemies. It's time to move past that. We'll talk about that and more. And then, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the show on more than 30 stations across our state, including WKBZ in Muskegon, that's 1090 AM, and WSGW in Saginaw, WSGW 2 stations, 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. You know by now for these 3 hours what I call it. I call it the Outdoor Magazine Studio. And most people don't argue with me. Now, there's a couple of people around here who are like, you really shouldn't say that. But Charlie Root is not one of them, because Charlie's in here with me right now. And you should hear the conversations that Charlie and I have during the break. It's a good thing that you probably can't. No, it's probably a good thing that you can't. Although, no, Charlie, the weather has turned south since I came in here this morning. And it might even be raining right now. And it's probably kind of cold. Is it raining? It just looks like it. So therefore, the crowds waiting to cheer in adoration of Charlie are not what they normally are. But some days you can drive by here. And if you do this, if you drive by the studios at WSUW, Wednesdays about, just before noon, there are people there, and they're Charlie, Charlie, Charlie. You can hear it. I'm telling you. I'm not telling you a story. It's real. It's the truth. So I appreciate Charlie, and I appreciate Jonathan Dent, and I just, in what I'm doing right now, this radio, podcast, social media, this whole franchise, it's a lot easier than what it used to be, say, when I was back in television. Television was just crazy. It took so many people to make that happen. Radio is a little bit easier, but it still takes, people to help. The people at SGW, Charlie and Jonathan, the affiliate stations. I cannot say enough about these affiliate stations. Airtime is extremely valuable. There's only so much of it, right? Weekend airtime during the day is very valuable because there are a lot of different people wanting that airtime. There are sporting events that are, contractually the stations have to cover. There are a lot of syndicated shows that want that airtime. So, every one of these broadcast stations in Michigan that airs my show means a lot to me. I could not do it without their support, and I really, really do appreciate that. Listen, in a couple minutes I got left, too, I want to go back to something I brought up in the first hour of the show, and that is infighting in the hunting. I hate the word community. I really hate that, but it fits for my purposes right now. I think that we are our own biggest threat these days. You've got the anti-hunters out there, right? We know what they want. They want to take away our way of life. They want to stop us from doing what we love. And they are a very real threat, but we know them. It's like know thy enemy. Well, thine enemy, that we know who they are. We know what they want. We know where they're coming from. This time of year especially, I see so much, and it's primarily online. You'll get it a little bit in person. People complaining about other people's harvest, people complaining about, the way somebody chooses to hunt, the animals they choose to harvest, and it'll get really quite negative. I've seen it on my own social media platforms here this past week. I personally have very little tolerance for it. I will try to interact with somebody up to a point. But then when they prove that they just do not want to have a legitimate conversation, they just want to be negative, boom, I'm gone. Ban, delete, ban, delete, ban, delete. I don't care. I don't have time for that type of thing, and I don't have an interest in that type of thing. What am I talking about? I'm talking about people who go online and say, oh, that's just a 2.5-year-old deer. You should have let it go. Well, that 2.5-year-old deer that I'm talking about in particular was a heavy beamed 2.5-year-old buck that I considered to be a beautiful buck, and it was taken by somebody very close to the Avery family farm on the west side of the state. It was a neighbor taken to it in a field my brother Tim has hunted for years and years and years. So I had some personal interest in it, some vested interest in it, even though I didn't know the guy who shot it. I thought it was a beautiful buck, and for somebody to say it's a 2.5-year-old buck, you should have let him go. And I told him that. I said, look, it's not your hunt, it's not your tag, it's not your experience, it's not your right to tell this person they should have let that buck walk. And this particular guy says, hey, us big buck hunters, we know 100 times more than the rest of you guys. I'm thinking, oh, boy, this is where we're going with this. And then I also saw it in a video that I posted, video from a tree stand I was hunting out of it. And as I panned the area, I panned across my crossbow, and a guy said, what, you must be handicapped, right? You're handicapped because you're using a crossbow? No. The only handicap I have is that I have to deal with people like you sometimes. There are so many forces in today's world who want to take away this way of life. They want to take away the fact that we can go out in the woods and harvest our own game with using tools that could be considered weapons, right? If we used them in the wrong way, but we don't. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter to us as a hunter what a fellow hunter does as long as it's legal. We shouldn't be concerned about the gear that they're using, the type of tool that they're using, whether it's a longbow like Gabe VanWormer or a crossbow like me. Does it matter? Does it matter to you what we use? And does it matter to you what animal we choose to harvest on our license that we legally obtained and paid for with the money that we earned through our jobs or however we got it legally? No. Congratulate your fellow hunters. Give them a thumbs up. Give them a slap on the back. Shake their hand. Even if it's not an animal that you would have chosen to take, they did, and it's their hunt. It's their license. It's their experience. So let's knock it off with the infighting and all this other stuff. It's just there's no room for it in today's world. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery. So glad to have you along with us. Why do we hunt? Why do we fish? Well, we do it because we've been doing it for generations. We do it because we are stewards of the resources. We do it because it's fun. And we do it because of the rewards of fish and wild game on the table in the freezer. Now, I like to wrap up each week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. And he's with us once again. Dave, welcome back. How are you?
Real good. And yourself, Mike?
I'm doing real good. But I was listening to the radio last week. I was listening to WSTW. And somebody was talking about wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. And I thought, hey, they stole my line. They stole my title, Dave. But I guess, when you're as good as you are, you've got to expect that people are going to notice and they're going to flock to see you at the restaurant.
Oh, what was the pretense?
It was a financial planning show.
Oh, Kevin Ray.
Yes, it was him. So you can thank him for plugging you as well.
He eats at the Dish up in Standish. He lives in Pinconning.
The Dish. So that's what they call it, the Dish?
Right.
King's Dish in Standish. Perfect.
Right. It's a slang for Standish.
Gotcha. Well, how about we don't do any slang and we do a real wild game recipe?
Okay, that sounds like a winner. I was out this morning checking for buck rubs and scrapes and stuff. Come across a few buck rubs.
Excellent. And what about that recipe?
Okay, we have a roast pheasant with sassafras, which is the sassafras is optional. I had in my yard in Birch Run, I had all kind of small sassafras trees that had green branches on them. So this is for 2 pheasants, and you could make either for 4 or 5 people. You need 2 birds, skin on, pluck them. You need a handful of green sassafras twigs, 2 peeled and sliced Granny Smith apples, 2 ounces of apple schnapps, 1 medium onion diced fine, a cup of golden raisins. That's the nice yellow ones. They're a little sweeter than the regular raisin. 4 or 5 slices of whole grain bread diced into small cubes, a small can of mandarin oranges, 2 eggs beaten up, and lots of fresh ground pepper. So in a large mixing bowl, mix all the above ingredients except for the sassafras twigs. If it's too dry, you can add some milk to moisten. What you want to do is when you put the bird with the opening towards you, and then tuck the wings around on the back side of the bird. Make a small slit on each side of the back opening to tuck the legs into, so they don't splay out when they're baking. It just looks a little more eye appeal. Pack the dressing into the birds. Now shove 6 to 8 twigs into the dressing and snap some. Maybe have them about 3 to 4 inches long. Snap some in the middle so that you can drape them over the top of the bird, and that's going to give you a little bit of flavor. Bake with a small amount of water in the bottom of the covered pan, 350 degrees for an hour, hour and a half. Remove and uncover. Drain the pan juices into a small saucepan. Return the birds to the oven uncovered. You want to kind of crisp it up now a little bit. Reduce the heat to 300 and finish baking until the birds are done. Skim any grease from that liquid that you're saving. Now for the sauce, you're going to add 1 ounce of apple schnapps, small diced onion fine, 1 to 2, well, maybe about 1 spoon of chicken bouillon. Break up the 6 to 8 twigs and add to the stock. Add more water if needed. You want about 2 to 2.5 cups total. You want to boil this about 15 minutes with the twigs in the stock. Strain out the twigs and the onions. Melt a small amount of cornstarch in cool water. Add slowly to get just the right amount of thickness. Remove the twigs from the stuffing and on the top of the bird and serve. The sassafras is optional. You know, gumbo filet is made from the leaves from sassafras trees down south. In each parish that in like Louisiana in Georgia where they make gumbo has its own unique flavors. So you got a lot of different flavors of gumbo filet, which is used in a lot of Cajun cooking.
I learn something every week from you, Dave.
Well, that's what it should be.
Well, of course. Why should nobody's surprised there? David, real quick.
That's why I'm in the position I'm in.
And the King's Dish restaurant is Standish. What nights are you in there again?
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you, because if you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to do this show, and I don't know what I would do. My name is Mike Avery. This show, by the way, is called Outdoor Magazine Radio. There's also a podcast version of this show that is available. You can hear it everywhere you hear your podcasts. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I do live streams every week, Wednesday morning at 8:45 from the studio, and then the big show every Wednesday night called Wednesday Night Live. How original, how clever, how creative is that? Wednesday Night Live every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Love to see you there. Have a great week. Firearm season comes next weekend. Looking forward to that.